Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Perfect RIA podcast, What Works Wednesday edition. Today we have Rich Chen, who you may recall from an episode we did a few weeks ago. Rich is a compliance attorney, or I guess, Rich, I'm not sure what title you give for yourself, but a compliance attorney that helps RIAs stay out of trouble. And we had a great discussion about compliance, but this week we want to talk about something that's unique about you, which is that you've accomplished all this despite having grown up blind your whole life.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, Matthew. Absolutely. It's my privilege to be able to share my journey, from growing up being blind to being an attorney and now owning my own practice, like many of your audience members. So it's a privilege to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you back. I want to highlight, and I hope this isn't too personal, when you and I spoke last, you were in France with your family, with your wife and your children, and you and I were having some technical difficulties, and this really stood out to me. Maybe it didn't stand out to you, but you, in the nicest way possible, asked for your wife to come in, help you figure out something with your computer. She was delightful the whole time, and then left to go back to do her thing. And I was so in awe that there was no frustration in your voice, there was no anger, there was no like, dang it, I can't figure this stupid thing out. You're just like, hey, I need a hand with this. Honey, could you come give me a hand?
Absolutely. So, I think a lot of it in terms of when we grow is just the realization that we all do need help at certain points in time. And just being, we definitely have sort of resources to, creative problem solve on our own, but sometimes it just helps to have someone alongside you who's going to come alongside you and help you out. And, that's what I like to do for other people, and I feel like it's a privilege to be able to do that. And my hope is that folks will be open to asking for help, because there's nothing wrong with it.
I love that. We all need help. That's a good reminder. Okay, couple logistics questions for you that I've been curious about. You're very active on social media. I love your social media. How does that work for you? Like, just logistically, how do you do LinkedIn when you can't see the posts?
That's a good question. So technology has really gotten much better since I was growing up as a kid in the 80s. Now there is what's called text-to-speech output. So basically, like an Alexa or a Siri, you have software programs for computers. Mine's called JAWS for Windows. And basically, when I type anything or give it a command to read anything, it'll read what's on the screen or what I type on the screen. And so now, sort of navigating, websites and emails and documents that I'm drafting is much easier. Doesn't mean there's problems, because it's always a game of cat and mouse. Technology gets better, and the speech technology doesn't always sort of keep right up with it. But it's all a matter of problem solving and sort of making sure that you can make the best of it.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think about advisors I talk to that say, well, I have a hard time writing, or I have a hard time reading, or whatever the case may be. And kind of, Rich, to your point, you just find ways around that.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's, fortunately, we have more resources than ever, but a lot of it is mindset, right? And I think in part of it is making sure that we are filling our minds with positivity. There's way too much negativity out there, and I've learned to really tune out a lot of it, and really to just focus on positive influences, and and making sure to believe that we can accomplish a lot, right? And that that there's nothing to be afraid of. I just did a post about my wife, not fearing joining this challenge that she had to drive an excavator and to accomplish certain skills with, even though she'd never done that before. Right? There's too much fear of failure, I feel like there. And the reality is that by and large, people are encouraging, and so there's nothing to fear in terms of trying things new and trying what you really meant to be. I feel like that would just be so much helpful for people to believe that they can do a lot and what they want to do. And it's important to make sure that we have the positive influence to encourage us to do that. So that's part of the reason I'm here, is to show folks that you really can do a lot. And there's a lot that's out there for us to take advantage of.
I love that. Could you share with us, like you mentioned some of the software you use, but can you share with us some of the things you do? You mentioned you try to block out the negativity, focus on the
Yeah.
positivity. What are some things you do on like on a daily basis or a weekly? Like how do you keep that
A lot of
mindset?
it is actually what I don't do, right? So I don't dwell on social media outside of LinkedIn, which I think is a pretty positive platform overall, right? I watch the news only to the extent that I can actually get to understand what's important out there. And for me, a lot of it comes from my faith as well, right? I believe in
Hmm.
the Lord Jesus and just the plan that I have been given for my life. I believe that we all have a plan to prosper, right? And that we all have a good purpose here, right? And so it's a matter of making sure that we don't listen to the negative voices that tell us that we can't, because they are subtle sometimes. And I think
Oh,
it's
yes.
important to make sure that we're not bombarded with that, because there's just way too much negativity out there nowadays, in my opinion.
Let's talk about that a little bit more. So when those negative voices come, right, which we all
Yes.
have, right, whatever that is, whatever struggle we're
Mhm.
facing, are there mantras you repeat? Are there things you go back to? What do you remind yourself of? Because it's so easy to get pulled into that negative, especially in today's world.
Yeah. So a lot of it is just sort of recalling the things that I've been able to get done before. I graduate. So just to give the listeners a bit of a understanding. So I grew up with challenges and certain forms of discrimination, but I still managed to get to Harvard College and Harvard Law School. I
Wow.
practiced law for some of the biggest law firms in the world, just starting my career, to starting the law firm, right? And there are definitely sort of challenges and failures out there, but by and large, I've been very blessed that there have been a lot of things that I have been able to accomplish, even with the visual impairment. And I think it's like a muscle that sort of does get exercised over time. Is that the more you
Hmm.
practice at those things, the more you're going to be able to tune out negativity and to believe that you can, right? And so it
Interesting.
is important to that constant to exercising that muscle. I also believe that one of the big things is that a lot of folks have big dreams, and that's very important and good, but all of it amounts to, you can't eat a how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right?
One
Effectively,
bite at a
that's what
time.
it
Yeah.
is. It's a matter of thinking about accomplishing the goals, but that requires a lot of steps in between, and just focusing on just what's right in front of you, one step at a time, instead of trying to sort of envision the entire goal. And sometimes it's frustrating if you don't think that we're far enough along, but it is important to do one step at a time, because realistically, you don't always know what's around the corner, and you just have to trust.
Hmm.
And like I said, in my belief, a lot of it is a matter of faith. But one bite at a time and one step at a time is really really makes a difference.
That's a really good perspective. All right. We've all heard that, eat an elephant one bite at a
Mm-hmm.
time. But it seems that what occurred to me as you were talking is that oftentimes when we get a failure in a step, we sort of like throw the whole thing out. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I missed one step, therefore the whole thing is
Yeah.
garbage and it's all going to collapse. That head trash
Yeah,
kicks in.
yeah. No, it's so easy to do that, and yet, it's so important not to get discouraged. I remember, so I went to Michael Jordan's induction into the Basketball Hall of Fame, and I remember one of the quotes that that he had put up there, that talked about the fact that why did he try baseball, right?
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah.
where basically, seven times out of ten, if you're good, you fail, right? It's because he realized that there's no success without trying, right? And that was really really
Interesting.
encouraging to me, especially someone who's on top of their game, who tries something new because they felt like they were really really passionate about it, right? And it always doesn't always lead to success, but at the same time, if you don't try, you won't succeed.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Something shifting gears just a little bit. When you and I first connected, I think we were messaging back and forth. You were talking about delivering value to your clients and whatnot. And if I recall the quote correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, you basically said like, "Hey, I don't know why advisors are complaining. Like, I'm blind and I can still do all these things." Like, I love how you wear that as like a badge. You're like, you tell me I can't do that. Like, whatever that setback is, and we all have them. You're like badge of honor. Like, you know what? I have this issue. Whatever. It's actually a superpower for me.
Yeah, so it is kind of true. Like we are all made in a unique way. We all have our special sort of talents and skills, but we all have our own challenges. And embracing those
Yes.
challenges, for me, a lot of it was, there were various forms of sort of, subtle discrimination, however you want to call it, growing up, that
Sure.
really pushed me to want to prove. When I was younger, prove people wrong, right? And just because you
Yeah.
just want to say that that's not right. I mean, I sin sort of more focus on sort of the more positive element of it, which is,
Yes.
to accomplish the things that I feel like, the Lord meant for me to do while I'm here. But in my early days, it really did push me. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because we all do have something to prove, but I think it's mostly to prove to ourselves, right? And even though
Yeah.
mine's a physical disability, we all have challenges that we face, and I think the challenge is embracing that we all face that challenge, and it does make succeeding much more satisfying when you accomplish something because you faced adversity doing it.
For sure. For sure. I love that. I worry, especially with kids, and I know you have kids
Mm-hmm.
yourself. And I don't want to get into a soapbox on this, but too often we label kids like there's something wrong with them, right? We say, well, they can't sit still, they can't focus, and they get these labels of like these disabilities, and you're like, well, you're not helping this child out. You can say, great, I get that you don't sit still. Well, like here's something we need to do instead. But too often these become excuses,
Right. Yeah.
where we want them to empower. Like, all right, this is how you are. Rich, to your point, you say, boy, we all have these challenges. Embrace that challenge and run with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we let our kids fall if they need to, just so that they learn, that there are real challenges out there, and they've got to be able to face them. And I mean, obviously, there's certain times where we intervene, but it's good to let
Of course.
kids, fall when they're young, so that they're not doing that when they get older.
Yeah, for sure it is. Rich, what are some other thoughts you'd have for advisors who, just anyone listening, when they're facing challenges, when they're facing those negative voices, and they just feel stuck there? Like we like to call it head trash, right? They think, all right, there's this thing I need to do, but I'm afraid to do it, or I tell myself why it won't work. Thoughts that you have there?
Yeah, so I think this is where it is very important to have people around you who are positive, right? And I think fortunately there are a ton of people who are willing to do that if we only ask, right? And so we are not, in my view, meant to do this alone. I believe it is vitally important to have those around you who understand, whether it's personally or professionally, understand who you are and are able to encourage you, and also to hopefully provide you with some helpful thoughts. We all need a brain trust around us, right? Too, that we can go to. I have folks that I go to in a variety of different sort of spheres of my life to get feedback, and to bounce ideas off of. And I think it is important for folks to have folks that they can look to, that they can rely on to help bolster them and to encourage them in that way.
I love that. I think it seems to tie back nicely to what you mentioned when we first started talking today, which is that we all need help. Yeah. And sometimes there's this illusion that I'm the only one struggling, right? Like I'm the only one with head trash. I'm the only one with the negative voices. I'm the only one that's afraid or thinks I'm going to fail. I love this idea of surrounding yourself with people who are positive. And I agree with you, Rich, completely. Most people in the world are, but we still need to reach out and make those connections.
Absolutely, because it's so easy to believe, like you said, we're the only ones facing this. this is why I also find it particularly helpful for us to be able to share our failures as well as our successes, right? Because then I think that it's helpful for people to see that, and I struggle as much as anybody else, right? With certain things, there are things that I try and don't succeed in.
You too, huh?
Golf is one of those things.
Really?
I did well for a while, and then I stopped progressing, and I was just like, this is, I liked it, and I still enjoy it, but it's a recreation. I won't ever be a scratch golfer. So it is what it is.
Not yet. Yeah, not yet.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
that. Can you give us some examples of maybe not people by name, but the types of people you've really had success surrounding yourself? Because again, you have a solo practice, right? You have your own practice, so it's not as though you're part of. I mean, at one point you were part of a big firm, but like the advisors listening to this, most of them are by themselves. How did you build a network, or what advice would you have for building a network?
Well, so one of those things is definitely think outside the box. And connect with people, because the reality is the people that you connect with are exponentially sort of expanding your network, because they also know other people, right? For me, in my practice, I actually connect with a lot of other small and solo practitioners, legal practitioners in the same space. Part of it is because, yes, technically we could be competing with one another, but we all have the mindset of being able to be helpful and encouraging to one another.
Yes.
And I think it is important to have folks who who have that same mindset, right? But they've been invaluable to me, just as a sounding board for ideas. We connect with each other, and I have to say, as I've told many folks, advisors, clients, the relationships are perhaps at the very top of the most rewarding thing that comes out of my practice, right? Whether it's with clients, whether it's with centers of influence or other sort of practitioners I work with, those relationships are really what stands the test of time, in my view.
Well, I like that. It gives you such a great lens, right? If I'm seeking out relationships, and that's my most important thing, right? It's less about what could I get from that person or what can I learn from them, and more about how do I build this relationship.
And that's really the part when it becomes really freeing. And I know from my practice, realizing that there's impact. So I make impact through my clients, but I also make impact in a variety of other ways, right? Sharing knowledge on social, on LinkedIn and in other ways, doing podcasts like this. The goal is to impact people. And there's a lot of different ways that I think we can do that. And that's when you really, really, I feel free ourselves, is when the focus becomes, how can I really impact the people around me? And that's really energizing. It doesn't burn me out like some of the things that when I'm sort of focused on, this self-focus.
I love that. Yeah. How do I impact people, right? Which applies personally, it applies professionally, right? If I'm sitting down, and you and I, same thing, like if we're sitting down with clients in our respective fields, me sort of like showing my deep knowledge of whatever technical subject, that might flatter myself, but that's not impacting them. But if I can show them, like you did on another episode, here are things you could be doing, that has a real impact.
Absolutely. And listening. I think listening is really, really vital, because people these days need to be heard. And that's, that's one of the things that I try to do a lot in the practice, is just be responsive. Just be responsive to people where they are. And it's not always a matter of finding the perfect solution at that point in time. Sometimes it's just a matter of people being heard. Because as in my legal practice and advisors and financial advisors, we face clients that come to us with a lot of challenges and issues, because and that's where we can add a lot of value. But, as much in terms of finding solutions, it's being able to empathize and relate to our clients.
I love it. Yeah. Listen, look for chances to impact. Love it, Rich. All valuable stuff. Well, as you know, this podcast is all about taking action. Are there any action items that come to mind for you, for our listeners, things that they could implement in their life as a result of this podcast?
Yeah, I encourage folks to think big, right? Think about what you dream about doing, what you think that you're made to do, and basically look at sort of what's the one small step that I can take tomorrow to start to move that in that direction, right? Because it really does build momentum when you take small steps to move forward. And also, I think it's helpful to share that with people so that they can encourage you and help you to not that you not to hold it over your head, but basically to say, hey, how are things coming? Are you able to sort of make the next step to move forward in your journey, whatever that might be? So that's what I would say in terms of practically what I would think about to say.
I love that, right? Think big. What is it I'm made to do, made to be? What one step can I take today, not someday, but today? And then who can I share that with? Which then ties back to our relationships, our impact. What are they meant to be? I love it. Well, Rich, as always, thank you so much for your time today. I thank you again for all of your abundance on social media, on the LinkedIn, sharing great compliance tips. We've got a lot of positive feedback on the episode we did together, and so we'll certainly have to do another one in the near future.
That's great to hear. Thanks so much again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And to all our listeners, happy planning.